Welcome to the San Jose Hockey Now podcast. I'm Sheng Peng, editor-in-chief of San Jose Hockey Now. You can also find my work at MEC Sharks on Twitter, Sheng_Peng, and Blue Sky, Sheng Peng.
I'm Keegan McNally. You can find my Twitter at half_hockey, my website, half-hockey.com, or at San Jose Hockey Now. This week, we have a lot to recap. But before we get to all that, we're going to hear Sheng with a quick word from our sponsor, Bring Hockey Back.
Yeah, so we have our first podcast sponsor, Bring Hockey Back. If you've heard of them, they do the best t-shirts, the funniest t-shirts. They also do custom hockey jerseys for any size, any event, anything like that. Obviously, if you know their work, they do great t-shirts like Director of Vibes, Shorts, and recently they had this awesome USA hockey t-shirt. You have it up?
Oh, wait. I'm pulling it. This is the highest production podcast in the business right here. Bam.
We have a lot going on here, as you can see from our backgrounds. They're much different backgrounds, but ka-chuck around and find out. They have other shirts up too. They just put up a Fun Dallas Stars shirt if you care about that at all. So anyway, check out bringhockeyback.net. Awesome t-shirts, custom hockey jerseys. And they're going to bring back some classic Sharks designs. We're still in talks about that. But anyway, check out bringhockeyback.net. Support them. Once again, they are our first title podcast sponsors. So treat them well, guys.
I love it. Yes, you mentioned we are in very weird recording locations today somehow. Off the top, I am in Amsterdam. In a basically my wife does rowing, and she's in a very large rowing regatta here in Amsterdam. So I'm kind of tagging along, and we're having a little mini vacation. That's why I look like I'm in a cubicle in Amsterdam.
What time is it over there?
It's currently 9:52 a.m.
Okay, so that's pretty good. Hey, this is commitment, right? The man's on vacation.
Hey, man.
And he's here to bring you the best San Jose Sharks podcast around. Myself, I am. Look, you can see what I'm wearing. This is after the Sharks 4-2 win over the Blackhawks. I am downstairs in a room. It is almost 2 a.m. here. So this is our commitment to you guys.
Yeah, we are in a ridiculous space of time and place right now. Actually, it's probably the furthest we've been like apart from each other doing this podcast in time and space. Think about it.
Yeah. Typically, Keegan is out east and I'm in the West Coast, but now he's in Europe and want to let him enjoy his vacation the best we can. So that's why we're recording right now at this time. So he can be. This is your first day there, first morning there, I think.
Yeah, yesterday I was here, but not really here mentally. I kind of just slept the whole time.
Yep. So let's get this show on the road so Keegan can enjoy the rest of his vacation, and then I'll get home and take a little nap and be there for Sharks practice tomorrow morning.
But I couldn't miss it because this week we have our post-trade deadline. Top 10 prospects, which is going to be our main topic for today. And that's kind of my whole bag. So we have that. We're also going to talk a little bit of the Eklund and Zetterlund trade fallout, or not Eklund trade, the Zetterlund trade fallout with William Eklund, featuring William Eklund. And then we're going to just kind of mention some of the themes that we've seen from the last 3 games after the trade deadline and talk about Giles's first NHL goal. So it's going to be an exciting podcast, and then we will see you all next week. So I think we should start with the Zetterlund trade fallout.
Sure.
Because it seems like that was the biggest, I think it's probably the biggest that I've seen the fans be a little upset with Mike Grier. Like, the fans have been upset with Mike Grier in the past, but I'm trying to think of another time when they've been more upset. Not that he
upset after Hurdle, I think.
That's fair.
Even though the Sharks got a lot of value back for Hurdle, but
I think that might be the big
favorite.
One. Yeah, that's probably it. But there was a pretty good reaction, I think, for a guy that's only been here for a couple of years, and it's not like he's drafted by the Sharks or like a fan favorite like Hurdle or Couture or whatever.
Not a long time fan favorite. He was a fan favorite, but not
a long time to be a fan favorite, which kind of says to a little bit of Zetterlund's personality and his play on the ice. He was a great Shark, and he's going to be a great Ottawa Senator too. But Yeah, I think it's interesting, just the fallout from that trade and the bet that Mike Grier has made on Zack Ostapchuk.
Yeah, we talked a lot about the trade last week. So specifically about the trade, just to recap, at least my stance is that a lot, like you said, is on Ostapchuk. So this is going to be a litmus test for Mike Grier and the pro scouting staff. The other stuff, though, about Eklund's emotions and the loss of his best friend, obviously very, very meaningful stuff. But I see a lot of reaction online. Oh, Eklund's going to leave automatically because of this, and I don't, I don't see that at all. I think what I see here is that Eklund, if you read, Eklund did an 8-minute interview a couple days after the trade. And the headlines are, oh, Eklund is unhappy. But if you watch the whole interview or if you read the whole interview, which I transcribed, you see that Eklund, there's basically kind of three parts to it. Eklund is unhappy about the losing his best friend, of course, very sad about it. Um, he is tired of losing, number two. But number three, he's excited to lead the San Jose Sharks
Hmm.
and lead the San Jose Sharks to winning. And so I think a couple things happen here. It's fine. The Sharks start winning, which obviously isn't going to happen this year, but in the coming years, while they still have control over
Hmm.
Eklund. And it's actually the same thing matters for Macklin Celebrini, too. Look at, don't want to freak out any Sharks fans, but look at what happened with John Tavares and the New York Islanders. They couldn't mount enough of a winning team for Tavares to want to stay there.
Yep.
So Mike Grier has a few years here with Eklund, control over Eklund, and he has about 8 years with Macklin Celebrini here to get the ship right. It's plenty of time, get the ship right, and so for the guys who want to stay. So Eklund's going to stay, I think, if the Sharks win. And the second thing is, yeah, Ostapchuk has to show that it's a more minor thing. It can be papered over if the other Sharks' decisions work out and they do a lot of winning, but obviously, Ostapchuk is not a very good player. Then if you're William Eklund, you're like, oh, you traded my best friend for this guy, and not in a personal sense, but more like that's a judgment, a condemnation on the Sharks pro scouting on Mike Grier
Hmm.
that, oh, maybe these guys don't understand talent
Yeah.
if Ostapchuk is not good. But if the Sharks win, if Ostapchuk is a winning player, is a good player, then there's really no issue here. So I think that we can kind of relax from the overreaction of William Eklund's going to leave automatically because William Eklund is sad. This is a business, and William understands it, and everybody in the hockey world understands it. If you can't get over losing your, if you can't get over your best friend getting traded, if it ends up being for the betterment of the team,
Hmm.
then you're kind of in the wrong business. So so I think we need to kind of pull back from that overreaction.
I think I think if the trade happens, everybody's going to point to it and say that it was
Oh
because
yeah,
of the
that's the reason
Zetterlund thing.
why. Yeah,
But I think honestly, it would be more for a roster construction thing. I think if Eklund is traded, it's because Mike Grier needs a defenseman, and a defenseman was
oh,
available.
that's another discussion point, though. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
talking about Eklund leaving as a
yeah,
free
exactly.
agent or demanding a trade because he's unhappy.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't see that either. I think it's if he leaves, it's through trade, and it's because Mike Grier saw a way to construct the Sharks in a different way rather than
Sure.
Eklund being unhappy. I think it sucks, but I imagine Eklund's been through some rough times, both on and off the ice. So you know, I think he will handle this well. He's still a leader of the Sharks team, and I want him here for the future. I'd be upset if he was traded, but I think if he was, it's going to be for like roster reasons rather than he's unhappy here. If he was,
He wants number one to win. I think
yes.
that's clear in his interview, beyond his best friend,
Hmm.
beyond other stuff. And number two thing that you said in terms of maybe he gets traded at some point for what the Sharks might need a little bit more, which is a number one defenseman type. Nobody is safe on the Sharks except for maybe Celebrini. I mean,
Yeah.
if we're being really serious about it, even a Will Smith type, if you think about winning hockey and who's going to be at the end of the day the guy to carry the Sharks to winning hockey and to a Stanley Cup. Celebrini is the closest to safe just because of his overall game, his makeup, all that kind of stuff, right? The two-way game, the Jonathan Taves, Sidney Crosby comparisons.
Mhm.
The more offensive guys that lean more offensive, like Will Smith, like William Eklund, always going to be a little bit like, how safe are they under Mike Greer?
Yeah.
And so I think that if you freak out about Fabian Zetterlund getting traded, Fabian Zetterlund not being safe, kind of a 20 goal, one dimensionalish, got a little part of his game, so I don't want to call him completely one dimensional, but a more offensive leaning winger that kind of maxes out at maybe 25 goals and is not a well rounded player, not yet. He's just 25,
Mhm.
of course, but not a well rounded player yet. If you freak out about a player like that not being safe, then you are in for a roller coaster in over the next decade here.
Mhm.
Because again, only Macklin is really safe, I think.
Yeah. I think we as fans get a little attached to players. I was upset with the
I get
Zetterlund
it.
trade
Yeah,
in general because of that reason, and concerns about not that Ostapchuk's not going to hopefully be a good player, but it felt kind of a strange deal in general.
sure.
Um, but I understand Greer's explained it really, really well. So I mean, it's a different philosophy, and yeah, there's also that report. I think we should talk about this too. That
Mm.
Greer was after Josh Norris, which was
Oh,
interesting.
yes, right. That is interesting. Yes.
Um, Josh Norris is like 25, was a former San Jose Shark. Well, San Jose Shark prospect. Himself traded to Ottawa in the Erik Karlsson deal. He's done really well. He's had some shoulder injuries and is kind of this like top six center that has been dealt with a lot of injuries and then got dealt at the deadline to Buffalo for Dylan Cousins in like a swap of changes of scenery kind of deal. But it's interesting that Greer was after him, given he's a little bit older than the core that it is currently, and he has had some injury concerns. But interesting. I don't know how accurate that was. I mean, I think it was from a good source, but
It's Conor Drager, who's
so
usually right about stuff.
it's
I would
interesting.
say with Norris that, well, first Norris is 25, I think, right? So he's the same age as
Yes.
Zetterlund. So it would have been
Hmm.
Zetterlund's age wasn't why he got traded. That's
Yeah.
Yeah. So Zetterlund wasn't too old for the
True.
Sharks. But I think though, I think to sum up everything, including Norris, look at what Micro really values and
Yeah.
ask yourself if William Eklund is that, if Will Smith is that, if Fabian Zetterlund is that, down the line. And also even Josh Norris, what Josh Norris has a little bit more than some of these guys in terms of Josh Norris is a two-way player. Josh Norris kills penalties, all around kind of player, right? And you get a sense of maybe what Mike Greer values a little more than other things. And it's not to say that William Eklund's going to get traded. It's not to say that Will Smith is going to get traded. Both both Eklund and Smith, they may be able to outscore sort of their like, Eklund's a little small. Will Smith is never going to be he's never going to be a shutdown defensive player. They may be able to outscore that. And so I'm not saying worry about either of those two players being traded.
Hmm.
But again, though, what does Mike Brewer value most? And does any player represent? And really, the only one that represents, answers, checks every box is Macklin. Like,
Hmm.
he checks every box for every GM in the league, I think.
Yeah. Every
So
team. Yeah.
everyone else, right deal.
Might be gone. But
Yeah.
that being said, I guess this is a good transition to in the last 3 games or so.
Hmm.
It seems like the young kids are kind of taking over in a little bit, right?
Sure.
Like you've got basically every single night you're getting goals and points from the big three, I guess. So Eklund, Smith, and Celebrini, it feels like, and then Mukhamadullin as well. So I don't know. I think they're starting to see some changes in terms of who the actual scoring from this team is coming from. That's been happening all year, but now that the trade deadline's over, some guys have moved on. Guys like Granlund, Zetterlund, they're really the big three, and the young guys are coming forward, and especially Will Smith is like every night doing something great. And it would be tough to see a world where Smith isn't your, you know, top six in the top six in your future. But
Yeah, definitely unlikely. Again, I'm not suggesting that any of
Yeah,
these
of course.
guys are top of the trade block,
Hmm.
but again,
Things happen.
things happen. But
Sure.
to your point, though, to your greater point of young players emerging, guys like Mukhamadullin, like Collin Graf, even like Patrick Giles, and I think what you're seeing here these last, really this last month, even though they've obviously traded, Wallman was part of this team for a little
Yep.
bit, Zetterlund, but over the last month, we really have to give the Sharks credit from basically after the Granlund trade, which
Hmm.
happened during, they had a long break in that stretch. And also when they came back from Four Nations and they had instituted a different neutral zone forecheck, kind of a 1-1-3. But I got to give a lot of credit to the Sharks in general that these young players have appeared to have taken a leap over this last month or so. Mukmudu probably the chief one that in terms
Oh
of
yeah.
2 months ago, he was looking very dicey in terms of his this season and his development, but he really seems to have figured out something. Just it seems
Hmm.
to have just turned on over the
Yep.
last couple weeks here or so. And Graf, obviously, we've talked a lot about his leap from last year to this year in Chicago tonight. He was the second most used Sharks forward. I mean, that's really,
Wow.
really impressive.
That's
Even though
very
it's just
yeah.
Chicago and whatever, but still, it's very, really impressive that penalty kill. He's first over the boards. They used them to finish the game off after Chicago had pulled their goalie.
Hmm.
Things like that, just little things like that that show the coaching staff trusting him. So growth in his game, we see promise from Patrick Giles, scored his first AHL goal. A lot of people wondered why did the Sharks make this Vanacek trade, especially
Yeah.
since it left Georgi Romanov kind of on an island here where he can't go back to he won't be available for the AHL playoffs because he was on the Sharks roster after the trade deadline. But you can
Hmm.
see that in Giles that the Sharks traded for something of a possible player. And you
Yeah.
have to remember too that Vanacek had struggled this season, so they weren't going to get a lot for him. So maybe they're going to get a fifth round pick or worse from Florida for him. And instead, they opted for a player that actually right now looks like he could be a fourth line center option next year. Again, not a great player, but a player that looks like he can develop into a useful AHL player. He's big. He skates better than expected.
Yeah.
Uses his size. Just plays a simple north-south game.
Hmm.
And did some penalty killing tonight against Chicago. And so there's some promise there. He may not work out, but he's I think it's worth trading a backup goalie that you weren't going to re-sign that's been struggling this year. And yeah, it does kind of hurt Romanov here, but I'm not sure how much Romanov is in their plans. Not really sure about that. And so maybe this is a statement to that to some degree if we're being honest. But overall though, that Giles, Mukhamadullin, Graf. Obviously, you mentioned Smith and Celebrini. I think Smith leads all rookies in scoring since that Boston game, January 20th. So that's
Crazy.
right. I mean, actually, Smith, I think at the beginning of the season, we predicted how many points he'd score. I think I've lost because I think I said 35 or something like that.
Yeah, I think I said
I was in the 30s.
40.
Yeah, so
I'm about to lose
looks like you're
too.
gonna lose. Yeah.
So and beginning of the first like 40 games, you'd be like, oh yeah, that prediction's never gonna
No
happen.
way,
And
right?
yeah. And we had said this from the beginning. It's like he needed the time. And this happened. This is probably the third year in a row now in terms of Smith's own course where he just gets better. Like as long as he is at a okay level, just let him get better. He's a smart hockey player. He's a great hockey IQ, and he eventually just needs time to let the game slow down for him. And that's what you're seeing is like the game now starts to look a little bit easier for him every single game, and he knows when to attack. And um, it's a really cool development to see, and it's
Mhm.
not something you see very often because a lot of times NHL players, especially that young, if they're struggling in their first 15 games, they're sent down. Like there's
Yeah.
no, they're just kind of plopped in the AHL and said go figure it out there. And a lot of times they do, but yeah, it's different this time.
Yeah, we have to give Sharks management a lot of credit
Hmm.
for this too. And I don't always give Mike Greer all the laurels, all the flowers here, but here I had to give it to him. And I'll say for us too that we were never, hey, you got to take him, you got to send him down to AHL, all that kind of thing, right? I think we were pretty consistent with,
Yep.
okay, the Sharks know him better and they know how valuable he is to their future, and so if they think this is the best course, then
Mm-hmm.
let it ride out, and it has worked out really. I think even maybe better than I would have conceived, just in
Mm-hmm.
the sense that the development days really seem to have helped. Like Smith looks stronger to me than he
Sure.
did at the beginning of the season, and that I think the development days help with that. Obviously, the game has slowed down for him. That skill, you see that more too. That's what I expected, but I see him
Yeah.
winning more battles than he did a couple months ago. That's what kind of surprised me. I expected the skill to eventually come to the surface because I thought the game would slow down for him,
Yeah.
but I didn't expect that he would get in a noticeable, appreciable way stronger and faster in season.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of seeing, not to say that he's as strong and fast as he needs to be. He's
Sure.
definitely not Macklin strong or fast, but he is winning more battles. He is better in terms of just protecting the puck, being smarter in terms of how to navigate larger defensemen, navigate along the wall and things like that. And so I think that's a underrated kind of growth in his development. He's taking the puck inside more, shooting more inner slot area, taking the puck there in general just to make plays too. So speaks to, I think, a greater confidence in his physicality and his body, that sort of thing. So overall, just have to give management a lot of credit for that they stuck with it. That seems to be the plan from the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
and it's worked out really, really wonderfully for them. And it's conceivable. It's hard to really think about this, but like, could he catch Michkov? Like, Michkov gets hurt or something like that. Wouldn't that
Yeah.
be crazy?
I think
With the
if
narrative
Michkov
being the
was
same narrative, yeah.
if Mishkov was playing like he was a few weeks ago, yeah, but I think he's had an increase in play
Yeah,
relatively
he
recently.
definitely came back from, yeah, Michkov came back from Four Nations on a little bit of a heater, but just that we're even thinking about the
Yeah,
possibility of that because
didn't seem
Smith,
possible.
yeah, Smith just keeps scoring.
Yeah, he does. Um, Another guy we've already mentioned him is Mukhamadullin. We kind of talk about
Mm.
Mukhamadullin, like and obviously we'll probably
We're gonna
talk
talk
about
about
him
Logan a lot in a little bit.
in a little bit. I want to talk
Yeah.
about like his play specifically. I've noticed a lot of defense into offense is what I'll say. Like a
Mhm.
lot of his um and this is kind of going back to he started off like focusing on his defensive play really hard, and you could notice the simple play that he was making on defense.
Right. We talked about that. Yep.
And now that like he's like boxing out his man, shuffling the puck along, he's breaking up passes. It's like now turning from just doing those to, okay, we've shuffled the puck along, it's going to another player who runs just down the ice, or he's blocking a pass and then he's sending that first pass the other way in a way that I think is awesome. I really am super excited about his play. It's been, I think it's been a while since the Sharks defenseman has really looked like this young. I guess like a prospect has really looked this top four worthy in a long time, and it's great to see he's really coming to his own. His physicality has improved a lot
Hmm.
too. He's
Yep.
using his big size to actually like pin guys along the boards and check and hit, and I love it. I'm just super excited about his improvement, and something that also you said like the end of the year looked rough, and he had this injury that kind of nagged on him, but he looks better now than he did at the end of last year when he was
Hmm.
looking pretty good, which
Yes.
is
Yes.
it's a huge step for somebody who's had some up and downs.
Yeah. It's particularly into tonight's Chicago game. You see the him and Ferraro actually have been a pretty good pairing. Ferraro will
Yeah.
close and finish defensively. Muguduan picks up the puck and just gets it forward, gets
Hmm.
the long stretch pass, or just skates it up himself. And you kind of see that kind of relationship has worked so far. And Mukhamadullin looks like really the Sharks. I mean, granted, yeah, Wallman's not there, but
Hmm.
Wallman's really the only guy that would have been ahead for sure. Like, he looks Mukhamadullin right now, the last few games, he looks like the Sharks' second best defenseman.
Hmm.
And that, considering where he was about 2 months ago, that comes out of nowhere. but it doesn't come out of nowhere for his talent, which we have been really high on for a long time. So it is
Yes.
kind of great. Just that it clicks. Sometimes it just clicks, I guess. And that's what it looks like for Mukhamadullin, because it wasn't that he's not like Smith necessarily, where I don't know if he got that much stronger in season or whatever, but it just clicks. Mukhamadullin is playing without kind of thinking too much. And you talk about really over the last month, right? The Sharks have cut down on their shots against, and a big part of that, of course, is the kind of different systemic changes, but it's also because guys like Mukhamadullin and even Lodrigrin have really stepped up. They've taken another level to their game where
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're like winning top four defensemen right now, but playoff caliber top four defensemen, but they are noticeably better than they were 2 months ago, 3 months ago.
Yeah, the ice time for Mukhamadullin is like starting in Ottawa on the 2nd is 19 minutes, 21, 22, 20, 20, 21, 22 minutes a night. So solidly a top four defenseman.
That's the number, yeah, and after Ferraro, right, number 2 now.
Yeah. So I love it. We've stuck through it for Mukhamadullin.
Patiently waiting.
Yeah. And hopefully, again, these things go up and down. So there's still going to be a down for Mukhamadullin. I'm hoping that down is stay in the NHL and then come back up again.
I think it is. It's hard to send a guy like this down right now. They don't have a lot of options, but also too, he's put together. I think he's been pretty good. The only bad game he's had in the and maybe in the last since Canada, since the road trip, is Colorado, but everybody was kind of bad that night. So
yeah, he looked a little slow on reads there.
That one did, yeah.
You could tell that there was some, like the speed kind of killed him there, but it was, everybody was getting killed by that team.
Yeah.
So yeah, super excited about him. Why don't anybody else going to talk about for the last couple games?
No, yeah, let's get over. Yeah, it's late.
Getting late. We got to do our top 10 Sharks prospects.
Exactly, yeah.
Let's do some caveats first.
Yes.
Generally, we eliminated players that eliminated them. We removed players that
they eliminated themselves. They graduated from this.
They graduated. They either played too many NHL games or were too old. Speaking of specifically like Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini. Sorry, we can't really boast the best prospect pool in the NHL anymore, I think, because our 2 best players are NHL players now.
A rough 50 game cutoff. I know that Scott Wheeler had a list about a month ago, right, where he still included Smith, but Smith's game was still kind of looking a little rough, and Smith obviously hadn't played as many games either at that point. So, but I think at this point, a month later, I think we can say Smith has graduated. Celebrini stepped on the ice the first game and he graduated. That's like, that dude wasn't a prospect from game 1.
Yeah, we only got to do that victory lap in the offseason of having the best prospect pool because Celebrini was
exactly. Yeah. He was leaving that basically the second he stepped on the ice. And we also didn't include Kovalenko because Kovalenko is about the 50 game mark, but also Kovalenko's obviously a bit older, 25. Sure. So, but I think otherwise though, that those are kind of our caveat, guys.
Yeah. I think there's we should start with the honorable mentions first.
No. I think we should do that later because honorable mentions, I feel like if we go through it, then we're gonna give away our list.
So, fair. Yeah.
So fair. let's kind of give some space for those guys after we get to our number 1. We don't know each other's list, by the way, so we'll blind. See. Yeah, and I think that this is a little more of a, how do you say it, a debatable top 10 than when we did this last year, or at least in the off season, the preseason, when we did this, and it was like, well, Macklin's number 1, Will's number 2, and so on. So, so anyway, okay. So, shall I go first, or do you want to go first?
You can go first, number 10, then I'll go after you.
No, I'll go first throughout then. We'll keep it consistent. So
Sounds
I'll
good.
do 10. Yeah, let's just keep it like that. And okay, so my number 10 is Leo Sahlin Wallenius.
Nice. Nice.
Shall I talk about him, or do you want to give yours
My
and
ne-
then we'll debate? I don't know.
my
How do you
number
want to do it?
10 my number 10 is Phil
Okay, let's
Bystedt.
do it. Okay,
So
Philippines. Ooh,
so
already a little bit of a surprise there. Okay,
I mean a
so
little bit, yeah. I
I mean,
think
for him to be that low, yeah. I'm
yeah,
not that low on Beasted, but I don't want to give that all away. But
sure. Let's talk about
let
Leo
me,
Wallenius first.
yeah, I'll start about Solon Williams first. So I feel like so on the list that I have, and I shared it with how many? Uh, five? Yeah, five. Mostly NHL amateur scouts, other sources too, but mostly amateur scouts. And Selene Wallenius and the next guy on my list were guys that there was sort of like, you know what, you can switch out a
Mhm.
lot of guys for basically your 10 and 9.
Yeah.
And so a couple things about Selene Wallenius. So a couple guys not huge on their on upside on Leo Selene Wallenius's upside.
Yep.
I think that's a big part of it. That okay, there's some qualities, there's some skills here. You can definitely argue for him in your top 10, or at number 10 or at number 9, but not a big fan. So he's not a guy that had a huge kind of support for my side. So I don't know what you have any thoughts about Solen Wallenius.
Well, it might ruin a future thing, so
Mhm.
I'll
Okay, you
might
want to
as
hold?
yeah, I'll hold
Okay,
off. But
okay, okay.
number 10, Beastat, that's not honestly an argument against Beastat. I think the names on the list above him kind of naturally and just by their seasons have been they project higher in the lineup than Beastat mostly. There's a few that do not, but that are safer bets. Bystedt is still putting it together. I think there's been a lot of good play from him on the Barracuda this year. A lot
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
improvement for sure. Um, and I think, and this is like his first real American season. He had like that little bit of play last year where he came in, looked lights out, and you thought maybe this would be the year to kind of like progress to a point a game AHL player that really is going to be moved to the NHL maybe the following year, but I think we're just
Mhm.
kind of pushing that projection along another year. Um, and that's not again a knock against Beastet. He has a lot of tools that are really tangible and really project to a high level in the NHL. But it still has to come together, and I think it's still not all there. His game isn't as complete game to game that it could be. There's some nights where you don't really notice Beastet all that much, and then there's other nights where
Right.
you notice a you know, very good skating, 6'3", 4", whatever he is, center that projects to be into a third line center. It's just we're still waiting for those tools to come together, and he's always been this kind of pick. So that's why he goes down to 10 for me, where a lot of the other guys have started to kind of put their tools together a little quicker,
Mm.
I think.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I'm gonna spoiler alert. I'm gonna have Bisa a little higher, but I didn't want to say though that I never thought that little audition he had last year was, oh, this is gonna, the next
mhm.
step is, he looked very raw last year to me. I know the
Oh,
points,
yeah.
like they look good, but it's just 7 games. There's like 7 points in 7 games.
Yeah.
Such a small sample size, and also coming off a year in Sweden that wasn't exactly a dominating season in Sweden either. So
Sure.
so this year doesn't really surprise me, and I still think I'll talk I'll yeah, I'll say maybe a little bit more. Actually, no, let's talk about Ryan because we're talking about him right now. Just a couple points is that the tools are still, as you mentioned, they're still tremendous. Size, skating. Well, you know what impresses me when I watch him in the AHL when he's on is his ability to play with pace
Mhm.
and to play with skill, make skill plays. And talking with a lot of scouts I've talked to, they're actually I think they like his potential a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't really see. I know a lot of people kind of saw when the Sharks acquired Ostapchuk, and the Sharks think that this guy is their third line center of the future over Bystedt. They're really different types of players, so I don't really see either as a judgment on Bystedt.
Sure.
You know,
I agree with
Bystedt
that.
has more offensive potential, and so if Bystedt hits, maybe he is your second line center, and maybe Smith or whoever moves to the wing. Maybe Smith goes up the first line wing, or maybe Bystedt goes to wing on a second or third line. There's no problem with this. These are different types of players, Ostapchuk and Bystedt. And so
Hmm.
I didn't really see it on a statement of Bystedt's development or any issue like that. So anyway, that's kind of a aside there, but I still am a very much a fan of his tools and also the potential too. I think because of the quality of the tools, that the potential is still very high with Bystedt.
I think we're looking at the same potential. Um, I think with a guy like Ostapchuk, who's higher on this list. Spoiler alert for me.
Well, let's wait on the stop check. So if you want to go to
Yeah,
number 9,
let's do
if
it.
it, yeah, because I don't know if I have anything more to say about Bystedt when I get to him on my list. So
I think I want to
um
make it clear that I like Ostapchuk, or I like Bystedt a lot. Like 10 is not a bad place to be
I'm
on this
surprised at
list.
10. So let's see the rest of your list.
All right.
This is suspense because I think the last time we did this in a preseason, we basically agreed from like 6 on. It was actually kind of
Yeah.
boring.
Yeah. So this is different. Again, I like him a lot. I've seen a ton of Bystedt since he was drafted. I enjoy the tools. I want the tools to be the player that he could be. And if they're not,
Okay,
that's the problem, right? Because he's not like Ostapchuk where there's other things that put him in an NHL lineup.
right.
There is the offense has to translate for Bystedt, or I don't know if he's going to be in an NHL lineup. So that's my point.
Yes and no. I with that size and skating, if gains a little more grit or whatever, which that's something you can add with
Sure.
his sort of his frame that I think he can still play. But that's neither or though. Yeah. So
Mm. Let's go number
number
9.
9, yeah, number 9. Number 9 for me is Collin Graf,
Mhm.
and I bounced a little bit on him. I heard or different people said different things where maybe their upside isn't so high at Collin Graf. But then I had somebody really likes Collin Graf said, you know, I actually had Collin Graf. I don't want to give away, but Collin Graf much higher on my list. So
Me
a bit,
too.
let me not
Spoiler.
much higher, a bit higher.
It's me too.
And
Spoiler alert.
so want to say that Colin has been really very, very impressive. And I actually just wrote about him and his performance in the Chicago game. And just that he might actually be the Sharks' first legitimate two-way middle six forward that they've developed. A good one, excellent one since Barclay Goodrow, prime
Mhm.
Barclay Goodrow. If you look back on it, they really that's part of the reason why the Sharks have been so bad the last few
Yeah.
years. Even though the high end of the team, Tomas Hertl, Logan Couture, Eric Carlson, Brad Burns, they've still had some players there, but the depth players, the sort of middle six of support players, they had nothing coming up that you could really put on a playoff team on a nightly basis. Not to say that Colin is there yet. He still needs to add a bit of speed and a bit of strength, but his growth from last year is really, really impressive. And I think that he is the Barracuda prospect that has grown the most from last year. And
Mhm.
there's a reason why people ask, why not Bordalo? Why not Gushin? Look at all the points they're putting up. Graf is putting up the points at AHL level, but he has other dimensions to his game. He back checks consistently. He can kill penalties. He is somebody that the coaches trust. Ryan Warsawski talked about that tonight. You're not going to hear that, unfortunately, about those other guys. And
Yep.
those other guys, if you give them a lot of playing time in NHL, they may score you 20 goals, but that's kind of all they do. Whereas
Mhm.
Graf, maybe he may never get to the 20 goal area, but maybe he'll score you 15, but he's going to be a lot more trustworthy. And
Yes.
that is more of an NHL player than a skill guy who can only do one thing and nothing else and adds no other, not a lot of other dimensions of a B game. And so impressed by Colin Graf. I actually may be underrating him. I was I was kind of surprised by how high the one guy who really liked Graf had him.
Sure.
And I'll tell you where he had him actually when we get to that place on this list.
Yeah.
So again, so there's a little bit of oh, maybe his upside's not that high, so a little lower on some lists. But for some people that watch Graf closely, really has shot up for some people, and that's a testament to just how much his game has grown from last year
Yep.
as a college free agent, where he just looked kind of like a finesse skill guy. If he isn't doing, I think last year someone gave me a comparison of Kevin LeBlanc, which is
Yes.
fine,
Yeah.
but that's not a necessarily a guy that you win with. And that Collin has clearly added this other dimension to his game. Again,
Hmm.
so much to his credit.
Yeah. I have Collin Graf higher than
Okay,
this list. So I'll talk
exciting.
about him when we
Okay,
get there. So I
yes,
might be more aligned with that scout that put him up pretty
awesome.
high.
That's awesome.
uh,
Sounds good to me. So,
my
who do you have
mine
at number 9 then?
Leo Sahlin Wallenius. So
Okay.
I've watched a few games of his this year. He's been all over. He's been in Liga. He's been in Allsvenskan. He's been in the SHL most currently. He's been in the J20s. He's been done some
Hmm.
international stuff. He's been everywhere, as Swedish players often do. But I liked him even last year before the draft. That was one of the guys that I signaled out before the draft happened that maybe the Sharks could target in the second round because I
Hmm.
really liked his game. I still really like it. I think he plays such a projectable NHL game, and he's still very young. He's obviously not the biggest guy. He's like 6 foot, probably exactly, um, maybe 6'1", but he plays such a projectable game. Simple, good defense, and I really like him. So I think this year he's improved that stock even more. He's looked great in men's leagues the whole year,
Hmm.
playing big minutes. So I'm not. I think it's just going to be a matter of time before they sign him and move him over. He'll play some AHL time, but I think it's one of those picks where there's question marks about a lot of defense prospects. I think I think the really question mark is really his ceiling, right? Like, is he just
Hmm.
going to be a bottom pairing guy, or does he have more offense to really get into a top four? Remains to
Okay.
be seen, but I think there's definitely an NHL defenseman there. Definitely is a tough word, but
Okay.
projectable is why I
Okay.
like him a lot.
Okay. 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 Number 8. Number 8, I have Zack Ostapchuk.
Me too. Hey,
All
we
right,
matched
we
it.
agree
All
on one.
right.
Okay, awesome.
Sweet.
So Ostapchuk, at least from what I heard, there was one pushback on just his sort of just upside excitement, but a
Mhm.
lot of guys were the people in general I talked to. There was otherwise no pushback. So I
Yep.
think that speaks to a general agreement that there is a third, fourth line ceiling to this guy as a center, which is very, very valuable. At least the third line part. If he's more fourth line, then that's more of a honorable mention on this list. But
Sure.
yeah, but I think that really, yeah, really excited to see what he brings. I think he's still dealing with immigration stuff. So, but again, this is going to be a crucible test for Mike Greer, his pro scouting staff. You trade kind of a bird in the hand player like Zetterlund player that has his flaws, but that you end up with a guy in Ostapchuk who will never score as much as Zetterlund, almost certainly.
For sure.
But does he have other elements to his game? So excited to see that kind of not just the size and the skating and the defensive awareness that we've all heard about, but just also a guy that is going to lead the Sharks. Maybe a guy that's going to wear a letter one day type.
Yep. It's same when I've seen again. We haven't seen him in San Jose yet, so that's going to kind of also see a little bit of his projection as when he's playing for the Barracuda, how he fits in with that system,
Right.
um, or if he's playing with the NHL or in the NHL level next year. But from what I've seen of him, I understand why the trade happened, and I have all of like projections, right? Like possible projections for these players, not like they're gonna reach these, but he's like the projection of a bottom six center. And same with Bystedt. It's like I see third line center as his like projection.
Mm-hmm.
And I see Ostapchuk as this between 3 and 4, but I think if you don't hit the 3, he's gonna be a fourth line center. So like,
Yeah, that seems pretty safe.
yeah, I like him.
One comp that because I did a separate story about Ostapchuk. I'm not sure if I mentioned it the last episode or not, or trade deadline episode, but Jack McBain
Hmm.
was a comp. I think that's a very good legit comp.
Sure.
Adam Lowry seems a little lofty, so maybe not quite there. But Jack McBain
Sure.
is a kind of a legit-ish third line center, kind of in waiting, growing into that in Utah. So that's kind of guy. That's a very, very valuable player. That player is more valuable than Fabian Zetterlund, even though McBain's scoring is half of Zetterlund's. So just to give you an idea of just how valuable the way Mike Greer put it is a guy who has the tools to defend against the top players in the league, to be kind of a stopper shutdown guy, which again, going back to Barclay Goodrow comes up a lot in this top 10 so far. But the last time the Sharks have had a legit in his prime shutdown centerman was Barclay Goodrow the year they traded him for the first round pick. So to get that back on the Sharks, that's winning hockey. You're going to win games with that kind of Celebrini, Smith, Ostapchuk down the middle if those guys are all who they're supposed to be.
I love it. No notes. I'm
okay.
That's our number 8. Who's your number 7?
Let's move along. Okay, so number 7 is Bystedt. And I won't say too much more because we talked a lot about Bystedt already, but I will say the reason why I have Bystedt over Ostapchuk is really just the ceiling. Bystedt just has so many tools and really, I think, a little more of an offensive ceiling. I don't think he's going to be an Alex Wenberg, but that's like kind of like the extreme high, I guess, right? Maybe for
if you had to pick a Sharks comparable,
right. Sure. And Wenberg is a really, really good player, as we've seen recently. Very underrated player.
For sure.
And a guy that can, in a pinch, be your second line center, as he's doing right now and doing okay at it. Whereas Ostapchuk type is probably never going to be quite that good that he can kind of fill in your top 6 and not look out of place.
Yeah.
Whereas sure. Bystedt, if Bystedt hits all the marks, he might be able to do that because Bystedt is, like I said, if you watch him at his best in the AHL, he's able to make a lot of really high-end plays at the AHL level. Not on an every night basis, but enough that I think he still retains a lot of his, how do you say, his halo, his shine.
Yeah. It's and it's again, it's always going to be a wait and see with Bystedt. He has so many tools, and he's been just kind of this. He needs to put the parts together, like for like 3 years, and you never want to give up. Like he's going to keep going until this either works out or it doesn't. Like there's never like a time when you're like, all right, I'm cutting bait with Bystedt, until it's like, all right, I'm going to cut bait this time. Like he has to fail a bunch for him not to make it, and that's not that's just because you want to bet on those kind of things with a guy like Bystedt.
Yeah, that package of size, of skating, of skill there's a reason why the Sharks picked him there over maybe smaller, more skilled players or whatever, as it turns out. Did want to add too that the person who really liked Collin Graf had him on my list after Bystedt ahead of Ostapchuk. So I thought that was pretty that was pretty high for Collin Graf. So credit for Collin Graf. Looks like that you might have Collin Graf. Well, you do. Obviously.
I do.
So anyway, let's get to your number 7.
My 7's not even Collin Graf. my seven is Luca Cagnoni.
Toasty.
My 7 is Cagnoni. Cagnoni, I think the thing with him is this is an all or nothing bet. Like Cagnoni has had that's my number 7. Had such a breakout year in the AHL. Right, started off super hot, has kind of cooled off and had some struggles otherwise, but the bet is there. It's either he's going to be on a power play and probably a bottom pair in the NHL, or he won't be in the NHL. I think it's like but he has that ability to be on a power play and he has great offensive tools and has translated it so far at a very young age. He started this year at 19 in the AHL into a pro game that I feel like I'm kind of tired of underrating Cagnoni just because he's 5'9" and his defensive play is not amazing. So I'm just gonna stick the flag at 7, and then it'll be my next short guy disappointment. So that's where I'm gonna put him. I like him.
I'm surprised because I actually have Cagnoni higher. He is my number 6. So
okay, cool. So he'll be your next short guy disappointment.
Well, I never had that much faith in him, to be honest, but
I
I had to say that he's been so good this
He
year
has.
that that kind of moves him up, right? And my central concern with him that I've stated before that I'm gonna come out. I've been working on something about it, but that kind of first step quickness, I've talked about it, right? And
Mhm.
how do you say um
Evaluations
after
of a skating are variable. How's that?
yeah, that's part of it. Talking with just understanding skating more, like I'm not wrong in sort of my based on just just like just looking hard and being honest with my assessment of him, that I don't think I'm wrong, but I may not be right either
Hmm.
on that obviously there are things that he does really well with skating, obviously, so that's not a
Yeah.
question. And that first step thing that I focus on, that first step to kill plays, that first step to kill the F1. Let's remember that Cagnoni is in his very first, he's 20 in his first year in the AHL. So, and that's something that can be learned. That's something that he can get better at.
Hmm.
And so we're not talking about hockey sense. We're not talking about, yeah, we're not talking about hockey IQ. Like that, you're not going to get much better with. And Cagnoni has oodles of hockey IQ. And so with that combination in mind, that maybe the skating just does get good enough that maybe he can be your PP1. Maybe he can be kind of maybe even better than a bottom pairing. You can protect him in the middle pairing because he is
Hmm.
a willing defender. He is, someone described him to me a few months ago. He's got a dirty stick. And so there's a willingness to defend that's there
Yeah.
that I like. He's not a defender. He's not one of these small guys that have disappointed over the years that don't
Yep.
seem that willing to defend, or it feels like they're being forced to defend.
Yeah. Ryan
And so
Merkley.
that's a big part of it. Right, right.
Ryan
The poster child
Merkley.
of that.
Yeah.
So I have him, yeah. So that's part of why I have him a little higher. And
Hmm.
it wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't become what fans hope for the reasons that we've outlined and talked a lot about. But he has been so good
Yes.
that it's hard to keep a good Luca Cagnoni down.
It
And
really
so
is.
number 6 on my list.
I was worried you were going to put him in the honorable mentions. That's why I was having so
Oh
many
no, 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 no.
caveats on
Oh
my thing.
really?
Well, I mean, I
Oh
think we had
wow.
it. Well, if we look back at our list, I think we were around. I think maybe I had him at 10, but I don't remember where we like. It wasn't like
That's true.
super
I
high.
actually may have had him.
Might
He
have been
he may
honorable
have been
mentions.
on honorable mentions to start the season, but granted that list included Macklin and Will, so you
Yeah,
already lose 2 spots there.
but
But
he's good. I really enjoy him to a surprising degree in the AHL, and I want his offense to translate. But you're
he's
right. He
been
has
terrific. Yeah,
a
he's been.
willingness to defend, and that other offensive defensemen don't, especially at the age of 20, right? Like it's
Yep,
just hard to do as a defenseman, even
yep.
at 22, 23. Mukhamadulin's 23. It took him
Hmm.
like how long to actually figure it out? Like it takes a while. So
Right.
yeah, I think it's a good sign for Cagnoni. I think the comparisons to Dan Boyle are a little overrated,
No,
but
that's the stuff that I push
yeah,
back at. That's
exactly.
yeah.
It's a special defenseman. So.
That's a lot. That's the first step thing I talk about too, which Dan
Mhm.
Boyle did have that I don't see there, but it doesn't mean that Cagnoni can't be a very useful defenseman at the NHL level.
So Cagnoni was your 6, right?
Hmm.
All right, so then my 6 is Collin Graf.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Pretty
Okay.
high. Um, I think it's kind of been bubbling throughout this year, right? Like
Hmm.
he's looked good at both levels. There's been
Yep.
times when he hasn't looked like he's been effective at the NHL level, and then since his last call up, he's just looked like a plug and play NHLer. And I'm not I'm not mad about it.
Hmm.
I think he looked great at the AHL level the entire year he was there pretty
Yes.
much.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there hasn't been that many like hiccups in his development. I think he has the skill to be a top 9 forward. Whereas, and what I mean at top 9 is you can plug him into like your higher lines if you need to.
Sure.
But he's probably best suited in a third line role.
Yeah, that's
Whereas guys like
yeah.
Bystedt and Ostapchuk are probably more suited for a bottom 6 role, and they'd look overmatched if they're higher. Maybe Bystedt possibly in the future, but that's still a projection. Whereas Graf has like there's a lot of variability, a lot of versatility with his play that I really enjoy his potential to be an AHLer and a good one. He reminds me, like you mentioned, of all of the guys that we've tried to draft to fill this Swiss Army knife role, like Gambrell and Gregor and all these guys like over the
Or
past like
sign from Europe, like
yeah
Yoel Shellman and Frederick
Donskoy and
Handemark, and
yeah
you said
Donskoy did
Donskoy
it.
worked. Yeah,
Yeah, he
Donskoy worked,
worked, but
but
like
yeah.
that's not a bad comparable, right? It's like these Swiss Army knife, probably third line forwards on great
With
teams
clear flaws in their game.
that in Graf last night, 20 minutes for his game. I think there's a good chance that next year he's slotted into our, top 9 and we don't look back with Collin Graf. And I think that's awesome. So that's why I have him at 6.
That's fair. I do also get what I heard from other people that just the upside may not quite be there. That
For sure.
you might have a Cagnoni or a Bystedt. I
Yeah.
he needs to take one more leap, I think, Graft. And I think we said this about Ethan Cardwell too, that
Hmm.
last year, that this he needs that one more boost. But what he did, Graft, I mean, from last year to this year, once again, so impressive. But yeah, when we talk about plug and play, that's such a valuable kind of asset in the league. I
Yep.
don't think he's I would call more potential plug and play. I see what you're
Fair.
saying. The pieces of skill are there. There's the attentiveness to defense,
Hmm.
but
His
needs, I
skating
think,
his
a
skating has
little more.
improved so much, or
It
just
has, it
was like
has,
the
it
end
has.
of last year. He just didn't look fast at all, and I don't know what happened, but man, it's not like he looks super fast, but he just looks up to NHL pace, and that's awesome because that was my biggest concern. Him in the NHL last year was he looked way overmatched
He
speed
did.
wise, so such a improvement for him this year. Who's your number 5? Top 5?
Okay. This one might be a little spicy, but this was a last minute change after talking with a lot of people. I'll add too, but at number 5, I have Quentin Musty.
Me too.
Woo! Oh wow. Okay, we
Look
we
at that.
actually agree. Okay, all right.
I think we're gonna have a lot of spicy takes about Quentin Musty.
Well, I think I will just kind of be kind of brief about it. The skill is still very very high. The skill is merits being higher on this list. No one questions that there's the ceiling of a top 6 winger, second line winger still.
Mhm.
So that I think hasn't changed from last year. But the more I check around, I still keep hearing the same thing that he's got to grow up.
Mhm.
And that I think is why I have some other guys ahead of him.
Yeah, I think that's exactly where I'm at. It's not entirely to the fault of Musty. Like
Sure.
he's going back into the same system that he tried to leave because
Yeah.
he's thinking that it's not good for his development. And um just the way that the OHL works, I guess. Like things didn't happen for him. He broke his hand as well, or had a hand injury. I don't know if it was a fracture or not, but he again, this is not a knock on his skill level or his ability to score goals at the OHL level or make plays or his hands or his passing or his vision. They're excellent. They're what you want to see out of a guy who's 6'2" and hard to find in that package. But there are concerns about the translation of that, his maturity level, his defense is still not improved. I mean, somewhat improved, I would say. It's not as bad as it was last year, but there's concerns. And I think the top 4 guys are really the reason why he pushes to 5. It's not because he's done what he's had to do to maintain a top 5. Like this guy could be a top 6 forward in the NHL someday. It's not like he's moved off of that projection. It's just there's still that next step that we're not going to see until he moves out of the OHL. We're just not going to see it. So either whether or not it can happen remains to be seen. He has all the skill in the world. So he's the one that I think both of us may make us look stupid. You know,
Yeah,
like
absolutely. I hope he does.
biggest
And
one.
I, easy to forget. He is so young.
Hmm.
He's not even 20 yet, right? He's 19 still, right?
I think he
Maybe he's 20, but
turned.
maybe
No,
he's
he
still
turns
learning.
20 in June, I think.
Okay, so he's still 19. So I look forward to him making us look stupid for having a little lower than we should. But
Yeah.
that's just keeps what's coming back to me. I keep checking different places too, so it's not just one person who has told me this, but has to generally, yeah, grow up on and off the ice a little bit. And so there's like you mentioned, a lot of talent there, and he's just 19, and so
Hmm.
these kind of leaps can be made relatively easily, and
Yep.
might happen as soon as next year, might happen as soon as, but these aren't concerns I'm hearing as much higher on our list, and so that's why for me he's number 5.
Yeah. And um, it really we'll have to see what he does with skill players, like how he looks with a bunch of skilled guys too. He might end up being just at the NHL level someday, just the sheltered top six forward, um, who you need better two-way guys around him, but still has that ability to um, help a line out offensively for sure.
Right.
Might end up making us look stupid next year. Who knows? Who's number 4 for you?
Number 4, I have. Oh, hold on, I'm looking at something. Okay, yeah. Number 4, I have Shakir Mukhamadullin.
I feel like our top 5 is going to be the same. We had some.
Really?
Yeah, mine's what we're
Uh
doing. So
no,
probably we'll
I
see.
thought we were getting spicy. I thought Musty would be higher for you just on
Yeah,
potential here.
if it
And
wasn't the last 3 weeks, yes, Musty would definitely be
yeah,
higher than
yeah,
Luca
yeah,
Dolan.
it's true. And we might be overrating. We might be getting a little too excited about Mukhamadullin just the last 3 weeks or so. So that's sort of a caveat with that. But in terms of just though, I guess the importance of having and just how hard it is for a defenseman to learn to play defense and to have a guy like this that showing length and showing ability to kill plays and ability to make plays too,
Hmm.
and just covers so much ice with a lot of offensive and defensive awareness that he's been showing recently. It's really, the Sharks have not had somebody like this on the blue line. I can't even say when. I mean, well, I know I don't want to say no. I mean, the last guy, size awareness, is a Norris Trophy guy, Brent Burns. So that's not fair. So I'm not trying
Hmm.
to say that, but it's just been a long time though that we've seen this kind of potential on a Sharks blue line. So I think we'll just leave it on that.
Yeah.
Actually playing in the NHL for the Sharks, and I think a lot of it in terms of the defense. I guess we are giving too. Look, if we're debating Musty and Mukhamadullin, Musty's had a better overall year. Musty had broke his hand. Musty didn't play in World Juniors, but still, Musty at his level has been the same scoring machine that he was last year too.
Yep.
Whereas Mukhamadullin has had a really rough year that we well documented. We don't have to go over it, but just he's had a development curve was at the end of last year. AHL All Star was rocketing up, and I expected him. I talked about it, bold predictions or whatever. I expected him to kind of hit the ground running with the Sharks this year. That did not happen, and it was looking pretty dire for a little bit there. I'll say the longer he kind of looked like he was languishing with the Barracuda, but again, something has clicked though, and now it looks like he is, like you mentioned, looking better than he did last year. He's back on track.
Hmm.
Whatever happened mentally, maybe he just needed the reset of Four Nations. Maybe he just needed to know that he wasn't going to get sent down for
Hmm.
just any or every mistake that he would make at this level. It might be underrated that he's getting to play with Ferraro, who skates well, covers, backtrack, defends. Ferraro
Yeah.
has flaws in his game, but Ferraro is alert defensively and skates well to help cover for mistakes. And Mukmadulin, on the other hand, can be finally that puck mover that we always thought that if Ferraro had the right puck mover, that Ferraro's game might take off a little bit. And Ferraro has been good, I would say,
He's been
in
very good.
general over the last month or so. So maybe part of that is both of them working together and maybe finding a partner for Ferraro that is finally clicking after all these years. I don't know. It's only been a month, small sample size. This may also make us look stupid too,
Yeah.
because we might be overrating a small sample size here. But the Sharks need defense so bad, and Mukhamadullin has so much physical talent, and to see it kind of starting to come together, like really starting to come together, is well, that's why he's my number 4.
Yeah. And we've already talked about him because we covered him on the game recaps. But yeah, I put him at 4 just because he has the other guys in the Shark system that we've mentioned or haven't mentioned probably fit more into a bottom pairing or bottom 4. He's more top 4, meaning I think he can play
Oh
20
yeah.
minutes a night at the NHL level.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that's kind of a bar that, he may not be 27 minutes a night. He may not be your top pair guy, but he might. I think that 19, 20 minutes range is possible for him and play good hockey. And he's been, it's just been a great couple of weeks for him that I don't know. We're right. Maybe he makes us look dumb and maybe we're overrating him, or maybe this is just a flash in the pan, but we've seen good play from him before. This isn't the first time. So I
Not
think,
at this level though.
yeah, I know. But I mean, what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say is like, this isn't just like one time in the NHL or one time level, you're seeing this good play and the rest of the time he's kind of bad. It's like, he's done this a few times and
He was outstanding in AHL last year, so that's a
yeah.
reminder to everybody.
So I'm hopeful that next year it's another year we can plug him in the NHL, because we were trying to do that last year and then he got injured. And I think, barring injuries, of course, this is a good projection for this player as a top 4, and he's showing it. So I really like his, like you mentioned, physical qualities, ability to kill plays, defense into offense kind of stuff that he does really well. And he kind of can go left, or can be lefty or right D as well. That kind of versatility, especially in the Shark system that's full of left defensemen and no right defensemen. It's a good thing. I think he's got a good spot in the lineup for next year, hopefully.
I think you hit on a very key point too, why he's so high, that he's somebody that has the potential, and he's doing that at the NHL level now, the highest level now, of being an impact player offensively and defensively. When we talk about Cagnoni, his
Yep.
impact's going to be mostly offensive. Even the Sahlin Wallenius, going back to another defenseman in our top 10, he's going to be on the more defensive side. Whereas, and that usually kind of relegates you more likely toward bottom 6. But if you're able to be impact guy potentially on both ends, that's where you become a top 4 potential guy. And a good top 4 defenseman is more valuable than a kind of a maybe more offensive leaning, one-dimensional scoring winger that Musty may profile toward,
Exactly.
or a solid combination guy like a Graf, but not as much offensive potential. A top 4 defenseman is so valuable. And so anyway, this is why that's to the point you made there about Shakir.
Yeah, exactly. That was part of the reasoning why I put Shakir above Musty was that exact reason. If Musty reaches the level where he's a first line winger, then he is more valuable. But
Sure.
a top 4 defenseman has more, with an a real top 4 defenseman has more impact than a scoring top 6 winger. So both of these guys, though, I really like their potential.
Sure.
But who's your number 3?
My number 3 is Chernyshov.
Hey, oh my God, we're gonna match the top 5.
Oh, okay. I guess this wasn't as interesting as I
It was
thought it might
spicy
be.
there for a minute. We were getting there.
It was. The great Bystedt debate.
Yeah.
Chernyshov, I will say that one scout had Mukhamadullin actually
Interesting.
ahead of Chernyshov. And before we get to the good of Chernyshov, and Chernyshov has obviously been dominant in the CHL. I think he's at like 44 points in 18 games, actually.
Crazy.
Quentin Musty like production, right?
Better.
But
Yeah.
better, a little better. But what this scout says to me, though, about Chernyshov is that he doesn't really think highly of the CHL level of play. The defensive discipline in the CHL and the goalies don't impress me at all.
Well, that's
And
fair.
so
Okay.
there's a huge gap in his mind in terms of pro and CHL and in terms of just quality of competition. And he also is still uncomfortable with Chernyshov's kind of the double surgery on his shoulder
Mm,
and what that's going to mean when he gets to a higher level. Right now, Chernyshov's a big guy who is sunning a much lower level, kind of like Musty, actually. Big guys who are dominating at lower levels. And so, not sure how that's going to translate when it comes to a higher level and a higher physical kind of level.
hmm
And so he's still waiting to see that from Chernyshov, how Chernyshov tests that shoulder against the strongest pro players in the world, be it in the AHL or the NHL. So anyway, though, another scout, bigger fan of Chernyshov, doesn't have these concerns, and size, skating, good hands, and also sees him second line upside, and doesn't have the maybe the shoulder, right? But otherwise doesn't have some of the questions that we have about Musty right now. And so that's why Chernyshov is a little higher
hmm
than Mukhamadullin. But really, though, I think 3, 4, 5, right? I think we can agree can be fairly interchangeable here. So if
Yeah.
somebody has Musty higher, if someone has Mukabadul in 5, right? I think we can all kind of agree on that. It's the same sort of
Yeah.
class of prospect here, right?
I think so. Yeah. It's tough because Chernyshov kind of like shot in there late, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of this is recency bias on this list, but um I don't know if there's a better word than excellent that
Yeah.
Chernyshov has looked in the OHL. He's looked excellent, and he plays a different game than Musty does. I think Chernyshov has a like Musty's not bad at it by any means, but Chernyshov has a really good puck protection game that like it's just funny. Like, he's bigger than everybody. Nobody can take the puck off of him, and then he makes a play. And that play often is like a very high skill pass or gets into space with the puck. So I don't know. It just is the the projection is very high for Chernyshov. Where if he keeps this up and the rest of his game rounds out and he can translate it, you're right. Again, that's not against playing against children. Um, it looks really, really good. It's yes, he has the shoulder concerns. I have more concerns in general with like hip injuries, Achilles injuries,
Mm.
shoulders. Yeah, they bothersome. Um, I don't know. It really that's
I
just
mean,
a.
Macklin had shoulder surgery.
I'm not always that worried about it. That's not that's not medical advice, but that's not the biggest
Well, you
concern
are
of
a
me.
doctor.
I know, but I'm not providing. Also, I should mention that on every podcast that anything I say should not be medical advice. Although I only give hockey advice anyway on these podcasts.
Doctor
Um,
Hockey.
only hockey advice, no medical advice. But anyway, point is yeah, there could be some lagging issues, but it's be strange to come out of the gate so hot and look great and not have any issues, and then all of a sudden, oh well, maybe a recurrence of the injury, etc. But I don't know. I
Yeah,
think
I'm not
he.
sure why this scout he was very focused on it. And so I was like,
I'll
okay,
try and do
well,
some. I'll
you're
try and
an
do some
NHL
digging.
scout, so all right. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna take your word for it. But
I'll
I
try and
will
do
want to
some
add. Oh, go ahead.
digging about. I'll try and do some digging about the injury and see if there
Mm,
was something specific or the surgery or what have you. But
right, right. But I would want to add about the recency bias, which does seem very obvious. Same with Mukhamadullin too.
sure.
But again, I filtered my list through, I think I mentioned 5, maybe 6, but 5, 6 NHL scouts, league sources that I trust. And no one said, hey, Chernyshov, just 18 games. You can't have him number 3. That's ridiculous. Or
Yeah.
Mukmat Doolin, he's had 3 good weeks. What are you talking about? So there
Yeah.
wasn't really a lot of pushback on this. So I just want to add that like recency bias or not, you can look at it as recency bias, or these guys are showing who they really are, or their ceilings. So,
hmm Yeah. It's a very high ceiling for sure in a shop as well, and yeah, it's gonna be awesome to see. Just hopefully next year, I think he will be eligible next year for the AHL. So to see him come over, um, Same with Musty. Oh, that's going to be a fun lineup. Although we say this every year for the Barracuda, we're always like, oh, these prospects are coming in. But remember that, like, that's not what makes a good AHL team. You know, it's not the 19 or 20-year-olds. It's like the
No,
30-year-olds.
it's not. It's not, right? I mean, we're going to talk about a couple of guys who missed this list and
Yeah.
just things about their game that are reasons why they kind of missed this list. But
Yeah.
so it's getting late here, so I don't feel like we need to
Sure.
do too much. I think we have our two and one are similar. Let's
They're the
see.
same players, I'm for sure.
Yeah, they're the same players. But number 2, I have Sam Dickinson. Who do you have number 2?
Me too. Yeah,
Okay.
Sam number 2.
All right, so
And then Yaroslav Askarov is number 1.
is number 1. So I don't think. Let's talk about Sam a little bit. I don't think there's
Yeah.
too much to say about Askarov because we've seen a lot of him
Mhm.
at the NHL level. He's on here just because he doesn't have a lot of NHL games under his belt, but by either the end of the season, if he plays a little bit more in NHL, or by midway next year, he's going to be off this list, right? So,
Mhm.
but I think with Sam though, I know that he has scored a lot this year, but I still don't know if I am seeing a future top pairing guy. I'm still more content with a top 4. That's what I'm more likely seeing here with the top pairing potential, but a little more. I feel better about projecting him as a top 4 guy, which that's why he's not ahead of Askarov. Is Askarov still projects as a top 10 goalie, potential elite goalie, but a guy who should be top 10 kind of
Mhm.
at worst for the
Hopefully.
foreseeable future. So I think that's more valuable, maybe not in trade, but for a team, that's more valuable than a middle pairing defenseman.
Yeah, I have him as the potential of a first pairing
Yeah,
defenseman.
potential.
But everything, like, just from the combination of tools, man, he's a good pick.
He
Um,
is. He was. Yeah.
Size, strength, skating. I think he has a lot of offensive tools, a lot of transition ability that, like, it's coming out. This year he's playing, for London, so it's not like there's a lot of, well, there's competition for like playing time because, like, it's a great team, but he's just very clearly way too dominant at this level.
I want to see him tested. I
Mhm.
want, his hockey sense, his pace, his processing. I think
No.
those are his biggest question marks. I don't think there's any questions about just his tools, his physical tools, but the processing in the highest
Yes,
level competition. I don't think he's getting that test in the OHL.
yeah,
So that's part of why too. Until I see that, it's hard to
yeah,
elevate him as ahead of Askarov for me.
agreed. It's there's still that question, right? Because we've
Yeah.
seen it when he was here that there's the tools, but the processing speed wasn't
Yeah,
there.
in
And
dev camp, in higher levels, dev camp and training camp. Don't
mhm,
want to kill him about World Juniors, such a small sample size. These are all small
yeah,
sample size. Dev camp, training camp, World Juniors. But in all these levels, though, where the competition was just a little bit higher, or a bit higher than OHL, that you saw question marks. You saw why there's still question marks about these kind of things.
yeah. You really hope it clicks at some point at the next level.
Right, and he's a
Maybe it's right
defenseman.
away.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Maybe it's right away. Maybe he needs more time. I wouldn't be the guy that's penciling Sam Dickinson into the NHL next year. Some people do that. Um, but the problem is like, I think he has to either go back to the OH. He does. He has to go back to the OHL or play in the NHL next year. So
Mm.
that's tough. We'll have to see what happens with that. Because you want him against the better competition. But
Yeah.
yeah, he's
Yeah,
already
AHL
like,
would be nice specifically for him as a test, but
yeah, we'll have to see. Maybe he does. Maybe they keep him in the NHL. Maybe he clicks over the summer. Who knows? He's done really, really well. That's also
yeah.
just a preface. This OHL season, he's ridiculous. But and it just validates a good trade up to get to them because you wanted either
Mhm.
William or Dickinson, who was left at that number 11 spot. Williams had a great year, obviously, but Sam Dickinson's no slouch. So that's a very good pick and a good job by Mike Geary last draft to get into that position to
Yeah,
get one of these defenders because
absolutely,
smart,
absolutely.
smart, smart play. All right,
Yeah, because
our
I'm
number
not
one.
sure where Stian Solberg would be on our list. So
Yeah,
No
that's a good
offense.
point. Yeah, no,
Um,
he would be fine, but no, Sam Dickinson's a different level.
I did want to add one extra note about Askarov that
Sure.
from this year that we've obviously seen the talent, his ability to just move side to side, just whatever, his ability to just stop pucks.
Mhm.
One thing that I wasn't sure about when I traded for him is just how much his teammates love him, and even going back to Milwaukee too. And that's one thing that's really impressed me because he has obviously he's a goalie. He's got a different personality. He's got the sellies, all that kind of stuff, right? I didn't know how that would translate into an actual locker room. And from what I've seen so far, that's going to be just fine.
Mhm.
A lot of it is because he has the game to back up his, let's say, eccentricities. He's got the game to back that up. But just a couple examples of just things that have stood out to me before they played the Predators in Nashville, and Askarov was smoked in that game. But before the game warm-ups, you see Svechkov, Spencer Stastny, Zach Leheru. I mean, maybe saying his name wrong, but these are
Leroux.
all his, huh?
Leroux.
Leroux.
I
Thank
think
you.
it's Leroux.
So his former Admirals teammates, just so happy to see him, that kind of stuff, right? And then you hear about what Paul Dorowski says about Askarov, especially in the first half of the AHL season, and the swagger that he gave the Barracuda. I think he had like a 930 save percentage in the first half.
Mhm.
That's what he can bring to a team. He can make a bad team okay. He can make an okay team good. He can make a good team great. He can make a great team one of an absolute cup contender. And so that's a potential that this guy has at NHL level. And so, but that the thing that again had struck me is just how much his teammates have embraced him. That he's not one of these space case goalies that is alienating teammates and that sort of thing, which I didn't know. I didn't know because some of the things he did were so strange that I wasn't sure exactly how his teammates were taking it and seeing it. Yeah, it's they embrace it. That's a guy that they're gonna block a shot for, and that's a guy that gives them confidence too. And so anyway, big part of why he's number one. But
Yeah. A number one with a bullet in terms of Sharks goaltending prospects for sure.
yeah, absolutely. Yep.
I think we need to eventually do like a guide of what is the most important part of a team. Maybe like number one center, first pairing D, maybe starting goalie, maybe, and
Yeah,
then
maybe.
it'll be like second line center, top four D,
Yeah, second, but depends on how good the goalie is, right? Because I would say starting goalie might be below
second line
just a starting
center,
caliber goalie might be below a 2C and a middle pairing defenseman.
maybe.
But a potential elite goalie, though,
Yeah,
I mean, that could be more valuable than, I mean, if you have like Dominic Hasek in his prime,
yeah,
honestly, that can be more valuable than Macklin Celebrini because Hasek in his prime can take you to the playoffs. Just
sure.
it doesn't matter what's around him almost, right? And so, yeah.
Yeah, and there's potential there for him. I think more like that top 10, top 15 goalie is more realistic for
Sure, sure. I'm
Askarov.
not saying he's going to be Hasek, but can he win a Vezina? I think the potential was there, and that's why
Sharks got to
he's
get a
so
lot
damn
better.
famous. Yeah. Oh
Sharks
yeah,
have to
yeah,
get a
for
lot
sure,
better.
for sure,
But they,
for sure, for sure,
if they do,
sure.
absolutely, he could be the goalie that does it with them.
But
So,
can he do it on a good team like Shesterkin's able to? Like maybe not a great team.
sure.
There's again the ability I think is there.
Yeah. I almost forgot. Well,
Mm.
not almost forgot. I almost didn't include him on this list because I was like, oh yeah, I guess he is. He still hasn't made the NHL yet.
He's
It's
close
just,
enough where yeah, I
but
can
he's
see
close.
why
Yeah.
like we might have forgot him. So but let's get to our honorable mentions. Let's
Yeah.
close this out. There's a lot of names we didn't mention. A
Hmm.
lot of names I'm sure that you're wondering about. So at least for myself, when I sent my list out,
Hmm.
these were the names that I had in honorable mentions, not in order. And
Sure.
I wondered if there was going to be a pushback. If like four of the five people I talked to were like, you got to have Halton in your top 10, then I would have had Halton in my top 10.
Yep.
So just for example, so anyway, there wasn't huge pushback for any, or there wasn't a groundswell support for any of these guys. Not like a ground like not multiple people advocating for them. But anyway, honorable mentions, not in order. Casper Haltonen, Cam Lund, Ethan Cardwell, Daniil Gushin, Brandon Swoboda, Thomas Bordalo, Carson Wesh, Matthias Havlet, Eric Polkamp, and Jack Thompson. And I want to mention the guys that did have a little bit of support, though, and just things that people said about them on my
Hmm.
side before you could talk about any of these honorable mentions. But um, so one source I trust a lot. Again, my top 10, Sahlin, Wallenius, Graf, they were kind of like, yeah, you could take those guys out. That was kind of a consistent thing. That 10 and 9 on my list. Like I said, Graf was a little bit not consistent support for him being necessarily like a must in
Hmm.
on this list. But one guy had Thompson number 10 and Gushin number 9. Let's not forget Daniil Gushin. So
Yeah,
didn't say too much about it, but I think it's pretty obvious. Thompson has more of an NHL ready game than some of these other defensemen, and he can also move a puck a bit. And while he's not a great defender right now, he has the frame where you can see him becoming a decent defender and maybe a valid kind of bottom pairing defenseman. Gushin just Gushin at some point, I hope the Sharks call him up and make him one of the 4 call-ups. I think he's done enough at the AHL level where you just want
sure.
to see if he can outscore the flaws in his game. I don't know if he can. I really don't know if he can, but I'd like to see him try. And talking with people about Gushin and Bordalo, there isn't the support for Bordalo. And sorry to say it, but it just for whatever reason, just with Bordalo's game, just hasn't translated to people who watch him that they think that this guy is going to be an NHL guy. Obviously,
Hmm.
he's got some offensive talent. Obviously, if you give him a lot of minutes, he'll score some goals. Same with Gushin, but there's not any B game besides it. There's not enough scoring to outscore the problems. You have a guy, you give him a lot of playing time, he scores you 20, but he hurts you in other areas. That's not a very beneficial player overall. And one scout said anyway, the Gushin Bordalo comparison. What do you have here? You have your list or what's the?
Yeah, I figured we're talking about him. This was the
Oh, good call. Yeah, just our honorable mentions. Okay, good call.
yeah.
But anyway, one scout said Gushin has put more effort into rounding out his game,
Hmm.
but still see him as a tweener.
Yeah.
And Bordalo, hard to see Bordalo finding an angel role at this point was just what this scout said. So I want to make sure that said that.
Yeah.
A couple other guys here really quickly. Oh, I didn't. Wait, where did I? I think I erased something I shouldn't have. But oh, one scout said this was the scout that wasn't as high on Ostapchuk or Ostapchuk. Ostapchuk.
Ostapchuk? I think it's
Oh,
Ostapchuk
Stopchuk.
or Stapchuk. I have no idea.
It's 3:15 a.m. So Ostapchuk. You're right. I was
3:15
having a
a.m.
yeah.
My God.
Not as high on Ostapchuk and Sahlin Wallenius, but he said the other options weren't so exciting either. But
Sure.
maybe Haltonen over them. So
Sure.
so that's a little bit very lukewarm support, obviously
Yeah.
for Haltonen. Another scout had actually Haltonen, Havlet, or Lund, and Havlet might be a little bit of surprise. We have been
Hmm.
hearing some good things about Cam Lund recently from Mike Greer. It sounds like Mike's going to sign him, so
Yeah.
so congratulations to Cam if that happens. But Havlet might be a little bit of surprise because Havlet's playing in Allsvenskan now, and what this scout said was Havlet playing really well right now. He's had some injuries, but he's healthy now, and he is your Garden's top defenseman as they should play in the
Hmm.
promotion finals. He says so. Let's not forget Matthias Havlet, second round pick. Obviously, hasn't hit the way that fans hope, but maybe there's still some game left in him.
For
And
sure.
so, anyway, so those are the guys that of the honorable mentions list that had a little bit of support for it. Maybe they should be in your top 10 for me.
Yeah, it's took a little bit for Havlet to catch on. He was like, bounced around, he had some injuries. He was not doing much at the SHL level. Then he is at the Allsvenskan with Djurgården and playing with some really good draft eligibles actually, and Frondell and your boy. I'm blanking. Oh my god, Baby Eklund. My god, Victor. That's his first name. Victor Eklund. So I think it's you're really hoping that this continues to translate for Havlin. Maybe Greer mentioned getting him over here, which I think would be an interesting test too.
Well, it sounds like they haven't given up on
Agreed.
him either.
Yeah. I have on there just like those things that are in there, like projection. Those are projections or like possibilities. Doesn't mean they will hit those things. They may go above, they may go below those projections, like bottom pair, bottom six, bottom four, top pair, etc., etc. But that's what I had kind of laid it out because that helps to organize it in my brain. Is what could their
Oh,
projection
I see.
really
Okay,
be?
yeah, I got you.
And Heltonen probably is number 11. This isn't ordered by like is the bottom of the honorable mentions are not ordered for that part, but probably is Heltonen at 11. I think he has a lot of power play utility, obviously, but the rest of the game hasn't translated to
Just
BA.
haven't seen enough growth. Obviously,
Yeah.
the shot and the size play.
Yeah.
Other stuff,
Gotta wait and see.
haven't seen it enough of it, even in London.
Yeah, Cardwell has a bottom six game in him. It's just I think gonna need more time. Just,
He didn't take that leap this year that we were expecting actually.
Yeah, he's looked okay in the NHL when
He
he's
hasn't
been
been
up.
bad. He hasn't been bad. Yeah, he's been good in the AHL, but again, that leap that
Yeah.
Collin Graf made, that Cardwell made last year, maybe
Yeah.
didn't make that second leap.
Yeah. Svoboda, I have written fourth line because I think that's his projection and that's where he fits the best. If he gets there, he gets there. If he doesn't, but I think that's where he slots in, and that's what you're hoping for Svoboda.
Yeah.
Rest of the guys, like you mentioned, Havlid, Bordalo, and Gushchin are kind of this is it. They're either going to be moved on from this summer or extended based on the next 3 weeks, I think, and the playoffs for the CUDA. So.
Gushchin's the one I want to see though. I've heard enough about Bordalo that I'm just not seeing it. So
yeah, he's been playing better recently, but yeah,
right.
I think Gushchin is above Bordalo in that ranking. I hope he can. He's still a goal scorer, and Mike
Probably
Reed
just
said,
give him 3 weeks and just say, hey, okay,
here you go. But we'll see. Lund, there's still a lot of questions with his game, but he does have skill. We'll need time to round out in the AHL. Wetch, bottom six or bust. And then, that's kind of it. Thompson, I think, will be this kind of NHL, AHL guy for a while. I think he's between the both. I think that's kind of where his projection is going to be.
Sure. Yeah, I was surprised that one of my sources had Thompson a little bit higher, but anyway. So.
And Polkamp is one that we never really like. He hasn't. I thought long and hard. Like, do I prefer Leo Sahlin, Wallenius, or Polkamp? Because I think both of them are the two defensemen in this range that have that. I think there's real ability to get into an NHL lineup, but I project Sahlin, Wallenius a little bit easier based on his defensive play than Polkamp's. Not that Polkamp's is bad.
And no one kind of shoehorned Polkamp in the top 10 for me, which I thought might happen at the back end, but no one did. So.
Yeah, and that's funny because our top 10 has the same names, which I thought might be different, but it wasn't this time. So just different order. I like it.
Yeah, I guess we have some groupthink. Sorry, guys. I thought we had some.
Well, it's you plus six scouts.
You
plus six scouts and me alone. So I'm giving
well, that's
myself
good job. Good for you.
Anyway, you got to go home. We got to get you out of here.
I do. And you gotta start your day. So exciting.
I know.
Amsterdam's amazing. So I lived there for a couple of months. So
yeah, you sent me a list of places to go that I'm going to go explore. So
one thing that I would say though about Amsterdam though is that as a food town, it's not amazing. Locals say there, you ask them what'd you do for the weekend, and they'll say, "Oh, I went to Belgium for the weekend to eat."
Interesting. I
It's
don't
not.
know.
It's not. It's not. They have good. There's good food there, but it is
Yeah,
not. It's not Paris.
I see.
It's not Tokyo. So
Okay.
in
All right.
terms of food,
I've been told that the dessert game is where it's at. So
yeah,
they
the
get really,
bakeries, dessert
yeah.
game are very strong. But
Hmm. Yeah.
in terms of dinner and lunch, not as consistently strong as Tokyo or Paris or other places. New
All right.
York.
We need to do a top 10 NHL or top 10 food cities.
Oh,
Maybe.
I can do that. I don't know if well, not definitely not today.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would sustain an hour, but or people want
Yeah.
to hear that for an hour, hear me talking about food. But
So we
I
should
could
do
do it
on
though. I could
we
do
should
it.
do on April 1st. This is off the record. Well, I guess it's on the record now. We should do like just a joke podcast on something unrelated to the Sharks, or do like an Islanders podcast or something. Do we should do it.
We
Change it.
have an actual sponsor now. Bring hockey back.
Sure.
Bringhockeyback.net. Keegan, that I don't know if we can fool around like that anymore. So
Well, they got shirts for all NHL clubs. We'll be a
that's true. They do. Maybe Dallas Stars, because but someone's paying for our time here. So
yeah, it's fair.
thank you
All right.
very much. Bring hockey back. Bringhockeyback.net. So
All
awesome
right.
t-shirts, custom hockey jerseys.
Yeah. Hopefully the audio is okay today too, everybody. My mic is different than it normally is, so we'll
Yeah,
see.
we we are 4,000 miles apart. I don't know how far apart we are. So yeah.
All right.
So sure that it's
Let's
audio
get you out of here. We will be back next week,
next
probably
week.
after I
Yep.
get back from Amsterdam, hopefully,
Yep.
with some more Sharks related news. So, hope you have a good week. Bye,
Bye
everybody.
guys.